like me as an enthusiastic debater, so lots of courage in myself. And yeah, but I, just where I'm strong with and that's so basically I'm part of DIA, and we definitely love the initiative that started, and love to be part of it. And so, honestly, I'm going to project some slides, and I'm not going to be looking at the text space because the slides are going to take up the large majority of the screen. So honestly, as I'm projecting, you have a couple of questions. Just feel free to unmute. Uh, to be honest, Berak gave me a structure as to how to move with this whole training thing. But I kind of just came up with something. So the first part of it, I concentrated mainly on British parliamentary and world debating, so WSDC format. I did not really dive into AP. So AP is Asian Parliamentary. I did not really dive into it that much. So I just stuck to BP and WSDC because I presume that's where most of us debate. I think that's a lot of the online tournaments that happen. I think WSDC principles probably to some extent could be carried to I don't know, Douglas Lincoln. I don't think. I think just look at these things specifically in the formats that they are. And also honestly, it's about scoring. So there's a bit of there's a bit of an overlap. So it's about scoring, but some points may seem like a judge training, So just I will try to rush through those points because I presume like we've had extensive stuff, and I want to keep myself to scoring and speak only about scoring. But I think towards the end, I'll be happy to take questions just about other things. So I will try to be relatively quick. If you think that's too fast, just let me know, and then we can walk through it. I think I was given 1 hour. I would like us to, get done in an hour, and I'll probably try to complete the presentation in about 30 minutes to allow for anyone who has any specific questions to ask me, and then we can, proceed. Okay. So I think I should say share screen. Wait, entire screen. Okay, okay, just hold on. I don't know what to do to get. Okay, share screen one. Okay. So someone's just gonna have to unmute and let me know. Can you guys see my screen? Hello? Just please.
Yes, James, you can see your screen.
All right. So I'm by no means a master at designing slides. Some of the slides are quite basic. They aren't as high level or high tech. They're quite simple. And so yeah. So okay. The first one. So honestly, when we're thinking about speaker points, scoring in general, right? I was trying to ask myself, how do I approach the whole, you know, training, and how do I make it as interactive and as chronological as much as possible? And I was reading the manual, so I read the WSDC rules, but that also contains a bit of the manual. And then I also read the WDC manual again, and I asked myself, how should I go about it? And I thought the first point of view is just explaining in the course of judging, right, as a whole, where do you as a judge, where does scoring come, right? So, for example, when we talk about judging, right, there are lots of points to judging, right? So there's the first part of judging where you're moderating a debate, right? And then within the moderation is tracking a debate. Then there's the whole process of deliberation, coming to a call, the perspective you have to presume you as a judge have to take on when dealing with such things. And so there's a whole lot about being a judge, right? And so the first question I ask myself is where can I start the training? And I think the one thing that appealed to me was looking specifically at where does scoring apply, right? Where does speaker point scoring apply? And this training will be is largely is this first part is largely to start and ask ourselves where does scoring lie. So the first question I ask myself is where does awarding speaker points fit in oral adjudication? And I think the first step, if we are to go through the chronological step, is deciding team rankings. I just want to give a disclaimer here. When I speak about team rankings, I'm speaking about a lot of things. So I'm speaking about team rankings in BP, team rankings in WSTC. So I'll be comparative. I'll be comparative. I'll compare BP and WSTC as we go on. But the first part is you begin the discussion by agreeing the rankings of the teams, which must be based solely on the aggregate contribution of each team to the debate. So broadly speaking, this is your general judge philosophy that looks at the coming up with a score using the aggregate contribution of either team and stuff like that. Roughly basic stuff. Speaker points do not influence the ranking. I think that's one of the fundamental things. So yeah, I think the next part of the slides are the first part is philosophy. The philosophy on scoring, and I think this is something that contributes part to that philosophy, which is speaker points don't influence rankings, right? Like speaker points are after rankings. So speaker points don't influence rankings, right? And so this is important because debates are won as a team, right? And not individuals, right? Therefore, when you're assessing the team impact, right, you can't be involving the individual speaking style or balance, right? In just general, right? When you're looking at speaker points, when you look at the ranking, you can't include an analysis of speaker points or how they said it or what, right? Maybe sometimes this could contribute to how persuasive you think the idea was, right? But I don't think it itself, because the point was explained properly, was explained nicely, can determine that. But that's a bit of training and stuff. But the point here is that you first decide the team rankings, right? And then a team can rank fast even if it has an uneven speaker performance, right? And so I think in debate we usually do it's pro am or airlines and stuff like that. And so the concept of airline is just usually what I was speaking about down here, that a team can win even with varying contribution. For example, I've out of the four Jersey Rumbles I've attended, two of those Jersey Rumbles, Danley did them with students who were like grade sevens or grade eights. And he won the tournament with one of them on one of their codes, And the speaker points were he gets like an 82. The other person the other kid, the boy was getting like 78. So honestly speaking, speaker points are different, right? So you have to first decide the call, you come up to the call, then you got the second part. And notice, I really try to highlight the parts that I think are very, very, very fundamental, and very fundamental as you're progressing and looking through your, this is, the judging career, and as you're in a room judging. The second part of this was that the step 2 is to assign speaker points after rankings are finalized, right? So speaker points, and this is now where speaker points fit into the whole, the whole bridge, or the whole structure of oral adjudication, right? You decide the call, then you come to the speaker rankings. So when you're thinking about your broader important perspective as a judge, and I think this is important because lots of times people don't think judging is important, but judging is very important. I think debate as a sport would not exist if you didn't have judges. And I think I've only met a couple of people, especially in our debate spaces, who want to be judges. And so I think judging is a whole philosophy of its own. It's a thing. And the good thing about judging is that the philosophy is usually objective, it's set, right? You have a metric you ought to follow. I think the subjective parts are just those tiny bits, but there's an objective aspect to it. So once you've locked in those rankings, you now start to assign the speaker points individually, right? Based on each speaker's performance, reflecting the imbalance within a team, given that different speakers can score differently. So when you now finish the call, so if your call is you have OOCG COOG or OG. Hey, let's say you have OG. Let me do the famous one. OG, I think CO. Oh no, let me say OG or OCGCO, right? So you now have your speaker scores, right? I would say it's not really, really difficult. I'd say maybe you can start with the first team, maybe you can start with the last team. It's honestly up to you. The discretion is up to you, right? But I think usually, let's say it will. I think the quality of the debate also, there are those things that you have to look at in terms of like the quality of the debate. But that's generally so wherever you start, right? Because if you thought a team came in fourth, right, and you look at them individually and their performance strong, then probably it wasn't that bad, right? But remember, you're looking at each individual's contribution. So when you're giving that speaker score, you're thinking, okay, OG1, and this is the PM speech. Extent or what contribution did the PM speech have to that overall case that I, as a judge, thought won the debate, right? That's what I mean when I say you assign those speaker scores individually. But the second thing is you use the appropriate scale, with clear reference to the performance benchmark. So you have to use the speaker scale. And I'm going to emphasize this chat on speaker scale because I think it's very, very important. In the latter part of the training, I have a couple of rants, but I'll tell you when those rants get there. But in general, it's just you have to use the appropriate scale, and the appropriate scale is whatever you usually get that adjudication panel and stuff like that. So the role of the chair, and I think why I really put the role of the chair here is that I think I think a lot of people think being a chair is just moderating the debate, giving OA and like controlling the deliberation. But the deliberation is not just deciding who ranks. The deliberation is also on speaking about the speaker scores, right? So it's the chair's role, right, to lead the panel in completing the ballot after a consensus. You have to agree as a panel, right? And so essentially, one of the good things a good judge will do is that you will leave time in your deliberation to discuss speaker scores. And I'll flag you when I get to that part. But in general, chairs roles are very, very important when it comes to the overall, scale or speaker points and scoring, right? So the next part, okay, I'll just try to do escape here and just ask, is there anyone with a question right now? Is there anyone who has a question, or I don't know which part should I use this one? Thank you. I don't know if anyone has a question. Okay, no one seems to have a question. Continue. Just give me a second. Okay. From current slide. Okay. So in terms of the philosophy, three things I just talked about here. I generally said speaker points are the value you attach to a speech, right? And I want to flag off this because I think it's very important. And I think you can even see the type of wording that I'm using. That speaker points are the value attached to a speech. What I mean by this is that when you're ranking teams, you look at the value that they have. So when you're ranking teams, you look at the contribution they have, right? In that overall case, you think that OG gave that won the debate, right? Each speaker on the team had value they contributed to that case. You get me? Each speaker has a specific value that they give to the case, right? That overall case you win. When you're giving speaker points, you want to award speaker points in while looking at the contribution of each of those teams to the case that they gave, right? To the case that they gave and where it ranked in the debate. If you're looking at WSDC and you're looking at a team and you're saying, okay, the prop team lost the debate, right? One of the things that you have to look at is this entire prop case that you saw that lost the debate. what was the amount of contribution, right, that ended up happening, and so those are things that you want to look at, and that's why looking at speaker points as a value, right, that you attach to the speech based on its overall contribution to the debate is a very crucial part, right? And remember that case that is given, right? And probably that case that is given, you can structure it in a couple of ways. But broadly, that value that they have, that they contribute to that case, right? I think we can think about it in the three simple metrics that we use everywhere in debate: content, strategy, and style, right? Now, I think one of the key things to realize here is that in WSDC, these things there's the level of priority you give them is set out, right? It's set out. But for BP, the level of this, the level of how you consider this is, I think one of the you would have to read the manual, but also I think one of the things is that you have to be careful while doing the balance, right? And so usually one of the beautiful things is that people never read judge briefings, but judge briefings are very, very crucial. Like I literally one of and even when I if there's need for people and people want the slides of the PDF, I'm happy to share. But at the end of it, I'll have to, and when I put CC, and like I say things, you'll see that like it was, some of them were judge trainings. I just sat down, looked at a couple of judge trainings, put a couple of my own thoughts here and there, and put them on paper, right? And so that's just the whole point. So you also have to look at what the different trainings give, but also the WSTC man, the world's manual is like your best friend when it comes to. So these metrics should guide you when you're thinking about how you're scoring your speech. Obviously, you see, when someone sits down to think of a speech, they never really initially break it down, unless you've been doing that STC for a long time and you think about it in those different ways. Is that a question? Hello. Uh, I think someone unmuted the music. I don't know if that's a question. Okay. Uh, okay. I will presume it's just this issue. Okay. All right. I'll just continue. Okay. So the down part, at the last part, I just put, hey, a lot of tournaments have judge briefings. Look at the judge briefings. You know, I'm telling you, you get a good tournament. Every good cap team will give you a judges training, highlighting the score. Look at it, follow it. It's very, very crucial. And to be honest, they don't really change. Almost every WSTC tournament will have the same exact scoring, right? Like almost all of them will have the exact scoring. I've 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 barely seen those that have like different scorings, but like you basically have the same exact scoring. So it's just very crucial. Like the moment you get it the first time, it just stays with you throughout the entire period. So just to for emphasis, right? And to just show you, yes? Yes? Uh, I I don't know. Is this a question you can ask? Okay. Uh, Brian. All right. Again, very very unsure what's going on with Brian, but I will proceed. Okay. So again, like I was saying, everything you need is in those manuals. For example, I pulled out this extract from the WDC manual, the revised edition for 2020, and just if you can read it, I highlighted stuff and I'll show you there. So speaker points are important. So they are very, very crucial. They are used to determine where teams total speaker points rank after in rounds. So as much as much many teams may break or fail to break on the basis of speaker points they have been awarded. So speaker points are very, very crucial. They are very, very crucial, right? They are very, very crucial. And so as a judge, when you're first and you're giving speaker scores, you need to be cognizant. These speaker scores are very crucial for these debaters when they're making it to a round, when they're going to make when they're going to break, right? And so I think a lot of people are misplaced that, oh, it's the amount of it's your ability to, but even your ability to win the debate alone is not that. Is not just enough. Even your ability, how your speech is weighed and how what speaker point that your speech is given is very crucial. So speaker points are very 100% important, especially when it comes to those close tight margins where someone, I think I've failed one time. One of the I think in 2020, in 2022, I failed to break at the tournament because of one speaker point. And so speaker points are very, very crucial. Like they're just a very, very crucial thing. And also, there are various speaker prizes. And just in general, guys, people are out here to people also want the prizes. So I think it's also an important fact that as a judge, like when you're scoring, what you need to understand is that you're scoring like you're part of a judge, you're a judge like of like let's say a tournament where you are, I don't know, like you're giving post speaker points because at the end of the day the speaker point you give someone contributes to, let's say, the ability to overall best speaker or to be in top 10 speakers. So just that itself is that, and that's why you have equity, that's why there's integrity, that's why, I mean, even like there's a lot to it, and so as a judge you're playing that role, you're a crucial person at the end of the day. You have a huge part in the tournament because if judges didn't give speaker scores, you wouldn't have top 10 speakers. You see, so speaker points very, very crucial. Therefore, judges should consider the awarding of speaker points carefully. And like guys, careful is very, very crucial. And endeavor to stick as closely as possible to the speaker point scale, right? And I'll flag you guys off when so everything the parts in red are very, everything in the parts in red are very crucial. Now, the next part I ask myself is, what is awarding speaker points fairly? What does it mean that you awarded speaker points fairly, right? What means that you awarded speaker points fairly? And I think the first principle is to always leave enough time in oral adjudication to discuss speaker points. In general, if you want to be as fair as possible, you need to leave time for speaker points discussion. You need to have time to discuss speaker points, right? Because at the end of the day, the speaker points are important. You're a judge contributing to an overall outcome of determining who's the best speaker or who are the top 10 speakers. So you need to give sufficient time for oral adjudications, right? But the second thing is that this will also apply if you're a solo chair, right? A lot of people think that, oh, because I'm a solo chair, yeah, I know the call immediately. No, you need to take time and deliberate. Take time and think about it. You need to take time and think about speaker's call. Because remember, at the end of the day, you have to first submit a ballot before actively speaking to the people. So even if you think you have the call, take time, think about the speaker points. You have to give this, and that's part of being fair, right? Part of being fair is following the procedure, right? And following the procedure is very, very crucial, right? Especially when you're at a debate. This is why you will never find a chair saying, oh, like, let's imagine someone gave a very, very good PM, right? Let's imagine the PM was very, very good, right? You want, like, let's imagine you get a member of opposition speech which is really, really good. The judge doesn't end the debate, right? Like, the judge doesn't end the debate. Remember, every speech is valuable. Every speech can convince you about something, about where a team ranks, right? And so that's the whole part about being fair. So even with speaker points, right, you have to leave enough time for you to think about speaker points because they're very, very crucial, and all the reasons that we've already chatted about. But the second thing you have to do is that remember that speaker points in general must reflect the ranking call result of the round. At the end of the day, if you're in WSDC, if you're in BP, at no point, I don't think, and unless the rules have changed, but at no point do we allow low point wins, right? What do I mean by low point wins? I mean that, yes, strategically, content-wise, content-wise, you think a team was good, right? But you think that team still lost the debate. So let's say you think Prop looked like a strong team, but on face value. But when you look at the content and you look at the engagement and you look at your notes, OP is winning, right? You are not allowed to give OP low scores and the win and give Prop high scores and the loss. No, the person who wins has to have the highest score, right? Because they convinced you. Those three speeches were able to convince you, right? And so you attach that value to all of those speeches, And so remember, speaker points must always reflect that, right? And this is the part where I wanted to be very, very forget your personal beliefs, stick to the speaker scale. Now, I mean, again, obviously, I have not judged it. I've not judged a lot physically, for example, like in Uganda. But I think even back when we used to have a lot of online debates, one of the biggest problems I faced was that uh, people, all certain judges, would always have their personal beliefs as to what a 80 speech looks like, as to what a 85 speech looks like, right? And a lot of these philosophies are based on just, let's say, I don't know, like they're based on, let's say, I don't know what the right word to use, but I think the best example is, for example, someone talking about a boss speech, right? And anyone can give a boss speech, right? Because you see, speaker scores, the speaker scale is not just made of random arbitrary scores. The speaker scale has an objective criteria next to it that explains what a speaker between 60 and 69 has done, right? Your job as a judge is, after I've looked at that team, after I've ranked them, this team ranked first, right? Now, when I look at their speeches, right, and I now look at the score and the scale, where do those speeches lie, right? Did I think that team won because very few people could respond to their arguments? But were those yes, that's true. But were those arguments well explained? Were those arguments yeah? So there are lots of questions to ask yourself. So you always have to have the scale next to you, And so, guys, forget your personal beliefs. Forget about what you think a proper speech looks like. There's a scale. Stick to the scale, right? Stick to the scale. In so many debates, I've seen, a team wins and people give them 70. But I, I mean, and when you look at the quality, let's say, of the debate was probably high, So you want to avoid those scenarios where you score people very low. You want to avoid those scenarios where you score people very, very high, right? Avoid both extremes. At least keeping it in the middle is very, very is much better. So you should assess all the speakers in a fair manner, right? And must take note of the fact that neither language proficiency nor accent influences a speaker score. Guys, it's the end overall argument we've always made for years, right? Guys, like, accents, language proficiency does not make does not does not at all affect the speaker score, right? Remember, it's about your contribution. Your contribution. You get me, right? It's about your contribution. So keep that in mind. Follow the contribution of the individual. And overall, just don't be biased. Guys, anyone can pull off anyone can pull off an 83, 84 speech. Anyone can put off a 78 speech, 79. So don't have a preconcept. Just be unbiased. Be a clean slate. Listen to these people. Come to a call. And from that call, how you value their cases, you start to give this Okay. So, guys, the next part of the training is honestly just trying to go through the scale with you and just showing you how it works, right? So BP scale. So this is the BP scale. So 95 to 100, plausibly one of the best debating speeches ever given. It is incredibly difficult to think up satisfactory responses to any of the arguments made. Flawless and compelling arguments. Guys, this is important because if it is impossible to respond to that speech, someone's probably not going to give up, you know. So again, you come 92, 94. An incredible speech, undoubtedly one of the best at the competition. Successfully engaging with the core issue of the debate, arguments exceptionally well made, and it would take a brilliant set of responses to defeat the arguments. There are no flaws of any significance. So this person has done very well, like very well, right? 89, 91. Brilliant arguments, successfully engaging with the main issues around, arguments explained and illustrated, demand demand extremely sophisticated responses in order to be defeated, only very minor problems, if any, but they do not affect the strength of the arguments. So you see, 89, 91. This person still has a mistake here and there, right? But it's not affecting the overall contribution. What does that tell you? Someone can have a speech very, very good, but also still has a couple of issues there, right? 86 to 88. Arguments engage with core issues of the debate and are highly compelling. No logical gaps and sophisticated responses required to defeat the argument. Only minor flaws in the argument, right? And this is probably now where you have a lot of wild speakers when at once, because it's a much more competitive tournament. 83, 85. Arguments address the core issues of the debate. So if you're thinking about the speaker's speech, you're asking yourself, okay, this member of government, all these arguments address the core issues of the debate. Okay, maybe two of them, right? Maybe two of them. Maybe the third one, was off, but yes, but broadly they address. Arguments have strong explanations, which demand a strong response from other speakers in order to defeat the arguments. They occasionally fail to fully respond to very well made arguments, but flaws in the speech are limited. And you think back, okay, member of government, member of government, gave a really strong speech. It proved, who I thought were winning, you know, and proved to me that they are losing to CG. How was member of OP? Okay, I think member of OP came in second. They beat their opening opposition. This can start to tell you that, I think their arguments and the explanations that they have were strong, right? That even with their strong responses to OG were unable to respond to CG. So maybe these guys are in a maybe this specific speaker is in a higher bracket, you know? And so you go again, you ask yourself, 79 to 82, are the arguments relevant? So you start to ask yourself that, okay, because I want to be very, very, very honest that sometimes, okay, when you start evaluating the speaker's speech, one, two things happen. Sometimes some people already have an idea where they think, right? But again, as you're a judge, remember, you have your phone. Always have the scale next to you when you're at a tournament and you're going to score. Just go back and check. I want to give this person a 73 to 75, right? And then I come here and then I read. Arguments are almost exclusively relevant, although may fail to address one or two or more core issues sufficiently. Arguments are logical, but tend to be simplistic and vulnerable to competent responses. Clear enough to follow, and that's credit, right? But maybe you're like, okay, that's a bit now too low for the type of speech I'm trying to give. If I thought that speech was able from member of GAP to sufficiently prove why they beat their opening, why they beat their OO, right? And set up a strong case that is not responded to sufficiently by EMO, right? Then maybe they're in a higher bracket. Do you see me, right? So you want to read this thing and get accustomed to it so that when you look at a speaker, I won't lie that half the time as a judge, sometimes you get it's your intuition that tells you, oh, I think it's this. But then you go to the speaker scale and ask yourself, okay, I think this person is an 81. Let me look at this bracket and see. No one is going to. No one is. It's not an exam, guys. You can take out your phone, see the manual, and obviously, because remember, speaker points are important for these guys. So it's important that you also take your time to make and put the craft and make sure that you give them the score that's appropriate to them and how they contributed to the debate. Again, so obviously this other part is just me explaining the BP score. I'll skip through that. WSDC score. So what's the one I wanted to share? So I put here constructive speeches, reply speeches. Again, different. So you see, in terms of WSDC, right? Overall is 100%. Style 40%. Content 40%. Strategy 20%. Do you get me? Right? So that's how the split is in WSDC. 40, 40, 20. And usually the speaker score for WSDC is between 60 being the lowest and 80 being the highest. That is very different from BP because in BP, 50 is the lowest and 100 is the highest, right? So you're working within a 50 bracket, right? Here you're working within a 20 bracket, 60, 80, right? So that's very, very different. And even the reply speeches, you're working between a 30 to 40. This should tell you that it's a very, very tight bracket, right? Between 60 to 70. 70 are average. 70 are very average. That means, because you see, I've been at a tournament and people, are probably, someone has scored a person a 76 or 79. A 76, 79 in WSDC is equivalent to you saying, I'm giving a person a 95. Do you get me? So you really have to be very, very specific when you're looking at these things, right? And so you also have to remember that if the WSDC score is from 60 to 80, that means it's very rigorous. It's very like speaker points are awarded according to who's able to meet that objective standard. You have to be very, very cautious. power source. That you can hear me loud and clear. Loud here and see me. Okay. I'm going to presume that that's a yes, that people can still hear me on from current slide. So understanding content. Just give me a second. Uh, all right. I hope you guys can still hear me. Sorry about that. Uh, that from current slide. Let's hope. Am I audible? Can you guys hear me? Let me see. All right, we turned it on. Okay. All right. So understanding content. So content here simply refers to the substance of what a speech presents, including arguments, rebuttal, POIs, and the use of examples. When assessing content, focus on the clarity, logic, and strength of the team's idea. Weak content often shows through missing links and arguments, like proposing a solution without the problem. The rebuttals ineffective POR poorly explained. Good content is clear, well supported, and engages directly with the team, right? And so remember that looking at there are specific things content is looking, logic in the strength of the idea, the rebuttal, how are you using example, how good were the POIs that you asked and stuff like that, right? Good content, if a speaker has good content, is clear, is well supported, and it engages with us. They are very, very comparative, and like you understand the idea. You usually, if you know that the content is really good, you fail to ask yourself the speaker. So whenever the speaker says something and you ask yourself a question, they always answer that question. And that's how it is. That's good content, right? So I also then try to, so WSDC, from the WSDC perspective, the WSDC, because remember we say that content is 40%. So there's a kind of computation it does here, mostly for WSDC. I wanted to do it because it gives that perspective of how WSDC is, right? And so again, and you see the beauty about this is that you can look the same way you apply the other one, right? The overall big one, the one about the overall score. The same exact way you apply this, right? If you debate about if we look at the debate about, let's say, the feminist, right? And let's say this person is speaking and they basically don't have any idea about the movement, very different stand them. Like, and the way they're explaining things, like, it's a bit, you can see, let's read 27.5 to 28.5. Arguments are mostly well explained with some logical gaps. Evidence such as statistics or historical examples from the real world are present, but only occasional. Weakness of opponents' arguments are exposed and analyzed. Rebuttals mitigate opponents' arguments, but not necessarily defeat them, right? So you can have good arguments. Let's say you can symmetricize something, right? But you don't necessarily defeat it. So analysis like symmetricizing of things could fall under here and stuff like that. Honestly, that's why, you know, judging is core, guys. Like you also have to really sit down and get it. So the more you sit down before a tournament, look at some of this stuff, read it, understand it, it becomes much easier. That's why I said have this look at it for reference. Remind yourself, you know. Style, on the other hand, refers to how a speaker delivers their content and executes their strategy. This includes body language, eye contact, vocal clarity, pace, tone, variation, the use of vivid language or characterization. When judging style, be clear about what specific features you are rewarding. Style should never be based on accent, appearance, personal presentation choices like palm cards versus sheets. Instead, focus on how the delivery trace enhance or hinder the clarity. So when you're looking at style, it's not, most people who think style is just accent and what. Style is a lot of things, right? It is how you keeping eye contact, how is your body language, how is your vocal clarity, right? You can't have a speech that's like going in one direction, right? You want to have a speech that moves So I mean, even when and from a coaching perspective, even when you're teaching speakers on style, like usually don't like the speakers who have like who are monotonous throughout from the start to the last. Usually tell them, no man, like your style is good, but there's something that can switch when it's monotonous. And so even for style, right? There's a scale. I'll read the 29 to 30. There is a natural flow to the speech. Words are chosen in a way so as to be most effective when explaining the argument while engaging the audience on an emotional level. Some minor flaws may be evident, but they do not interfere with the flow of the speech, right? WSDC. So WSDC 70 to 71. So usually 70s are like the average. 70 is the average. 71 is a higher part because it is 70, 71, 72, right? Then for BP, it is 75, 76, right? Because they are very, very different parts. Yeah, sorry. I sometimes when I speak about it, I feel like I remember I'm a debate now and talk about it so passionately. But yes, so but you usually want to focus on this tiny, tiny subtle meanings and differences in performance. Because remember, and you see, this is now where the full circle gets, right? So I, I think about it as a full circle, right? That if determining the call is based on overall team impact and speaker points are awarded based on each individual's performance, when you're giving speaker scores and you think someone belongs in two brackets, right? You want to first understand what those brackets entail, right? And then ask yourself, right? Did the speaker engage more effectively with opposing arguments, right? So if you're looking at a team like, let's say that was fourth, right? And you're saying, oh, okay, I think both these guys are the same thing. But I think one is slightly better. And you engage and you're like, okay, who at least tried to contribute more to rebuttal? Or, was there slightly a much better and a much purposeful structure in one speech, right? Like, you see, even the small differences like clarity, responsiveness, depth of analysis, nuance, right? Did one speaker just set out the points, right? Did one speaker state his 2 points, but in-depth analysis with proper examples? Did one speaker just put a bunch of arguments with no illustrations, right? Did they just use big words? Was one person able to explain? So honestly, those tiny, tiny subtle differences, honestly, they really end up making making a difference in the overall grand scheme of things, right? And so, guys, uh, that is the end of the presentation. I have finished it with 7 minutes left to go. Yeah. Okay. I see the first question and I'll start answering. Uh, so Daniel Emmanuel says the issue of automatic loss and same speaks being the same for all speakers in a certain position. How would we handle that? The issue of automatic losses. So one, Daniel, there are no automatic losses. That should never happen. There are no, for example, a team not having a policy that debate, right? It's just that not having a policy makes your case very, very unclear, right? And if people point it out and explain that this is lacking here, so for that, you can't answer it. So probably the lack of policy was not the cause, but sometimes you can have a policy that's not effective. So you can have a policy so again, one, there are no automatic losses unless the team doesn't show up in the debate, but there are no automatic losses. Second thing, same speaker scores being the same speaks being the same for all speakers in the position. How would you? So again, one, maybe if they are being the same speaker points for certain people in certain positions, I don't think that should. So what I mean here is that let's take an example for OG, right? Whenever people doing OG, people think that the OG is very, very difficult, and even the winning record isn't. So usually, like let's say a PM will get less speaker points than a DPM because a DPM had the ability to respond, and sometimes people like, oh yeah, responding is very, very crucial. So give this, right? And so one of the funny thing is that you would have sometimes tournaments where you have OG or the PM getting such low scores, right? But it doesn't honestly make sense because sometimes you can have a PM contribute more to the case than the DPM who responded. You get me? So I think for same speaker scores, it's like that chart I had to you about having the same margins, those tiny differences, the tiny margins. So where it's different brackets, right? It's different brackets, but also maybe within the bracket. Because, for example, if you have your bracket of 72 to 74, right? I think determining that someone is a 73 is not very, very difficult. Maybe they're in between the bracket, right? So you have to be very you have to be very, very careful, And sometimes it requires you to be pedantic. Sometimes it requires you to be like hyper thing. And I think for me, the most effective way is towards the tournament, get the manual, review the scoring, review all this. It gets you ready. I mean, every tournament I've been doing, where I've been judging, I've been rereading the manual. That's why, for example, I mean, if I'm asked to share the thing, I'm going to tag a lot of just recognition to this tournament's briefing, this one, this. You keep reading this briefing. Some of them, they're very, very good when you down and look at them, and even the managers themselves. So yeah, thanks for the question, Daniel. I don't know if there's anyone who has a question, but I'll then hand over to Berak. So that if anyone has a question, I don't know, he handles it. But yeah, guys, that has been the presentation. Uh yeah, I know I've been speaking for the past approximately 53 minutes. 57, I think. Thanks, guys. Thank you so much for attending this thing. I'm honestly happy to contribute. We have very few judges in the country. Next year we have WSDC. And honestly, I would love that next year when we have WSDC in Kenya, we have judges who are very, very capable. Very, very capable. And I'm honestly so happy that I could be part of this, because next year in Kenya, we need to go. We need to have people there, so that at least we're able to break a huge number of judges. I think that's one of our. I think we can also have a strong contribution to the circuit like that, and not just WSDC, even BP, right? By giving the best judges, and I think of late we've been having bad rep. So yeah. So yeah, thanks guys so much. I don't know if you guys have any. uh I'm getting lots of thank yous, and thank you guys also. I definitely will appreciate it. Thank you for sparing your time, and I'm happy to be part. So yeah, Berak, over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, James. I think I've attended in piecemeal. I'll follow up on the YouTube. I'm just going to invite our cohort president, Daniel, to say the last word. Sure.
Thank you very much, Barrick, for this opportunity. And I would first of all like to thank James for making time in his busy schedule to always come and check on us. He has had a busy semester, I want to say, because he told us some of us earlier, and due to those kind of things, I know he would have had more time to come and engage with us, but it's very, very much appreciated and highly recognized that you have come, and we are so, so much indebted to whatever you have told us. And I pray we really, really put up a show that you would love at WSDC Kenya.
Thank you, thank you. Honestly, I really think we'll do well. I think it's not just WSTC Kenya. I think, honestly, guys, I encourage you to sign up for the tournaments. Uh, I will probably have a word with, I think, Berak. I think there are lots of tournaments online. Usually they ask for IAs, right? One of the things that helped me very, right, is that I would apply, and when they ask how do you trust yeah, I just trusted it. So I was saying, so usually they'll ask you how much do you want to be paid. I would usually put zero, right? I would say I just want, I want to judge. So they would put me in the tournament, and I'm not getting paid, right? Everyone else is getting paid. I'm not getting paid, right? And so, you do that. So for example, even right now, you know, to better myself as a coach, I'm trying to WSC tournament. So, you know, so again, I think for the past two tournaments I've done, I did the Asian WSDC, I did the Colombia WSDC, the Western WSDC, and I wasn't paid. So I think you build that experience, right? So I would really encourage, right, that maybe in the whole cohort we have someone who I can direct you to the Facebook page. There's one about judging IS, and at least every week someone can come up with a short saying there's a judging opportunity here, there's a thing here, it is that. And I think, the more you judge, because you also have to, because, being a good judge itself has not always been enough, So, for example, I always thank TJ and DIA that, but at the time they made me the WS, I didn't, they just, put me there. And so, you for these bigger tournaments, you have to TV, right? So between now until WSDC, right, until Worlds, can you do enough tournaments where you break, you chair out rounds and stuff like that? And trust me, the first 4 tournaments usually are very difficult. You usually don't break, you're a trainee, and it's very difficult. But yeah, so stuff like that. Yeah. Thank you so much, Daniel. Thank you. And also thank you for sharing it, guys. I know. Yeah, the AI is a bit difficult, but I'm happy. So, yeah. Barak?
Okay. Yeah, I think it's really been fun being around.